Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Funnel Fiesta. Today's topic is actually going to be about being the guest expert. Now, being a guest expert is something where I feel like there's a lot of people in the online world that they feel a push and a pull between terms like expert. A lot of times like you see people who kind of mock the word guru and stuff like that. Um, that being said, you can definitely showcase your expertise. I feel like a lot of those worries about collaboration, about being seen as an expert, what does that mean? Who is an expert? People who worry that if they collaborate too much with others, it takes away from their own business. Even, the sort of trends in a lot of coaching where it's all about kind of doing things on your own. I feel like while there is a lot to be said about working independently, I feel like there's a lot to be said about making sure that you're not leaning too heavily on collaborations or, how there's a lot of coaches that work under other coaches and, they're pretty much in a coaching mill, et cetera, et cetera. While that, you don't want to be too much on that other extreme, there is so much that you can do to become the expert in a lot of different ways. Uno momento, because I have a poodle, a mini poodle, who's going to scratch their way into this room. So just a moment. Come, get in. Come on. Come on, Gingy. If you want it in so bad. All right, so Ginger insisted on being the guest expert for this video. Now, for your guest expertise, it's literally whatever your expertise is. A lot of times people make this concept way too hard. In fact, when you are being a guest expert, that can be whether you are a guest on a podcast episode, whether you're doing whether being featured in someone else's Facebook group. You're the guest expert when you are, how sometimes people have somebody else take over their Insta stories. That would be being a guest expert. When you are writing a guest blog, that's being a guest expert. There's a lot of ways where you can showcase your guest expertise. That means that you can actually start sharing who you are, kind of giving people outside of your usual audience a taste of you. And also you get the benefit of, even if they don't directly say it, which most time when you're a guest expert, they will, having somebody else vouch for you and whatever it is that you do. That is something that does help you, especially if you're new. When I started my business, a lot of what I did in the beginning was, I kind of did things on my own. I did my own challenge. I didn't promote in anybody's group. I relied heavily on my own networks. And while that was fine, I did get a lot of word of mouth clients and stuff like that. Eventually, you have to go beyond your own circle. And especially back then, I did not always quite understand what my branding should be or my unique value proposition. In fact, I found that being able to be the guest expert in other groups and working with other people actually gave me a really good idea of, the sort of reality behind other people's processes. So not only was it something where being a guest expert and working with other people, kind of seeing how they booked podcast guests, how, seeing how they had the onboarding for someone who's going to be a guest teacher in a program that they did, that really just helped me just learn more. Not only that, but that actually kept expanding my influence, my range, my audience, the people who knew, liked, and trusted me on the internet. And I can tell you some of those early, guest features that I had, those people who were in those groups have later become clients. They become members in my own group, so it does really work it's worked for me very well, especially when I launched 2 courses last year. And that's how I had my first 7K month, was because I did so many guest expert sort of things. I guest blogged. I live streamed into groups. I was a podcast guest. I did interviews. I was here, there, and everywhere. I pretty much did a launch tour. If you can think of a book tour, kind of did the same thing for my courses. I was everywhere because I knew that my following was really small and I had a lot to give. I had a lot of good insights, but I needed to expand if I was really going to make any impact, you know? So being a guest expert, there's a lot of things to be said about it. You just got to make sure that you don't have this kind of mindset I think that a lot of people do when they start working with collaborations where either they get really nervous or they abdicate all authority to other people. You know, you can collaborate, still be an independent person, still, you know, being able to do all these different things in your career, in your business, without feeling like, oh, you know, I'm not as independent or other coaches don't have to do this, which is BS. There is one coach that I follow who I do appreciate very much, and she's gotten to a point in her business where she's really upfront about how she doesn't do interviews and she doesn't do this, that, and the other thing. No, she doesn't. However, you know, back in the day, she was on every podcast that you could imagine for a coach. She was doing this, she was doing that, she was on TV, et cetera, et cetera. And she still does that when it's fun for her, but that's how she built her business. And I feel like there's a lot of people who kind of watch these big time coaches who don't really do collaborations or stuff anymore, and they don't realize that how that person got there, where they are, was through intense visibility activities, because that's what being a guest expert really is. That is a visibility making activity, and in your business, especially if you're new, you should be doing a lot of those, because people can't get into your funnel if they don't know who you are, if you're not there to be seen. If you're not there to be seen, then how can they buy from you? It's that whole process, and that is why being a guest expert is one of the easiest and most fun ways, at least for me, to get my brand out there. Because one, I love being a podcast guest, and honestly, being on a podcast is fun. It doesn't need to be something that, you know, freaks you out. It's a good time. Live streaming into a group, you get to hear a lot of cool different questions from different audiences. When I did a live stream into Hannah Dixon's virtual assistant group, the Nomad VA, that was fun for me because I got to answer a lot of different questions from VAs, from different people on LinkedIn in a way that I hadn't really like, oh, okay, well, this is how you guys use it. That was fantastic market research, to be honest, for me. You know, you want to be able to do these different guest expert opportunities because they're going to build your brand. Now, I've said, come here, Bella. My guest expert's trying to run away. So I have said a lot about, you know, why to be a guest expert, how it really helps your funnel, because it gets new leads in there, it gets you out there, it builds up that know, like, and trust factor, which they've done studies, and I don't know if this is the exact science, but they say that a potential customer needs to have what they call 7 touches where, oh my gosh, just a moment. Princess Bella has to leave the room. She had to get in here, and she tried to get in here. Now she's trying to get out, so just a moment. If you have questions, please drop them in the comments. I know that the second that, you know, we start hearing a poodle cry everywhere, it's going to ruin this live stream. So sorry about that. She is very spoiled. This is really the fault of everybody in this household, but I do have a spoiled poodle. Let me let her out. Come on, get on out. I'm doing something. Okay, so Bella the poodle. That was my guest expert. Be better than her. But anyway, so yeah, so having those extra touches of just kind of expanding your reach is really important for a brand, especially if you don't have a big circle now. When you develop your newsletter, when you develop your audience, when you have a number of followers, what have you, you can be a lot more picky with what you're doing. However, in the beginning, you need to be seen. So you need to think about, okay, what's actually going to get me out there? Now, I would suggest that you think about where your ideal client is. Are they listening to podcasts? Are they Facebookers? Are they on Instagram? Think about, where are they on Medium? Do they blog? Like where are they absorbing information? Where are their rock stars? Because if you can think about who is really moving and shaking in your industry, then you can reach out to them to be on their podcast, to, offer maybe some training into their group. There's a lot of ways that you can swing it. But you want to make sure that you're really thinking intentionally about the collaborations. Because while I say collaborations are great, you want to be the guest expert all over the place, you also want to make sure that you are actually going to, you don't need to necessarily get a very transactional ROI on this, but you want to make sure that it's either something where you're going to have fun, you're going to learn something, you're going to get some new clients, or you're going to get some experience. If you've already done a lot of speaking, then you don't really need the experience. If it's something where you're not sure how your product might play with this demographic, but you're interested to see, that could be market research. When I did that launch in February, for all my courses, I was really intentional with the different groups that I reached out to because I wanted to see because there was one that was for wellness professionals. There's one that was for interior designers. So I went through some different industries, virtual assistants, and I did all these trainings in these different groups because I wanted to see who was really hungry for this material, and that was really beneficial. Now, I've talked so much about why to be a guest expert, how it helps your funnel, maybe some mindset issues that some people have with it, but I haven't told you how you kind of get yourself into this position. Now, most groups, most podcasts, most live stream shows, most entrepreneurs, they're going to have some way for people to work with them. Most podcasts have a contact sheet that you can pitch. A lot of podcasters have open calls for interviews. The same with live stream shows. A lot of big blogs have ways for you to actually contribute. So you can actually find most of these on a contributor page or, be our guest. Some podcasts have those pages on them and you can submit there. A lot of people informally ask for these guests in groups and stuff like that. The thing where I see a lot of people go wrong is that there are a lot of people who, when they see an opportunity, because keep in mind, most hosts of shows, podcasts, or big blogs, they don't do a lot of big calls for submission in groups, because what happens is that people will just say, PM me, I'm interested, which if you're running, a large scale blog or something like that, or you have an online magazine, you're not going to get back to that person. Logistically, there's not enough time. Also, they didn't really show you any sort of ability besides, oh, I'm interested, send me something. Usually they say that when the actual post said, please submit here or do something like that. And that's a big red flag. Whenever somebody is posting a call for guest experts, the best thing for you to do is read the whole thing completely, because most of the time how they're doing it is that they're going to have you submit to a form. Maybe there's an email that you write to. They're going to have some certain things that they want you to send in, like your website, your blurb, your freebie, what kind of topic that you want to talk about. They'll want you to actually make a pitch, because a lot of times when you are being the guest expert, it's because you pitched yourself into that role. A lot of people don't really do a good job at pitching themselves. What they do is that they say pretty much, oh, I'm interested, tell me more about it, which is most of the time whatever's in that job posting, or that pitch post, is all the information there is. Literally. Because I run a podcast and I don't do open calls for podcast guests anymore, because most of the time people never read my post. I would give very firm instructions on what to do. I would even say, hey, you need to pitch me on what you think my audience would like, because I want people to actually at least look at the blurb on what my demographic is, what my podcast about, and be able to think what's going to be interesting. Think on your feet. If somebody's giving you an opportunity to pitch you to them. It's not up to the person that you're pitching to think about how the heck you're going to fit into their brand. You need to be able to think on your feet about the stuff that you can talk about. I suggest that you take a second to think about the top 3 things that you can talk about. And don't make it broad. A lot of times people are like, I can talk about mindset. Like, who can't? You're gonna want to think about, okay, I talk about mindset for people who have finished their graduate degrees and are looking to, finally get into the job market and use that degree. You could have something where you do health coaching for postmenopausal women who are entrepreneurs and have adrenal fatigue. Like, think about something specific. And then when you have 3 specific things that you talk about that's in your expertise, that hopefully lead to your funnel, because that's the thing where people go wrong, is that they will give a laundry list of things that I guess they could talk about. However, half of them don't relate to anything that has to do with their funnel. You want to make sure that what you talk about, whether you are writing a blog entry, whether you are on a podcast, whether you are a guest expert in a Facebook group, you want to make sure that your topics are something that is related to what you sell. Because at the end of the live stream or the episode or what have you, you're going to be given an opportunity most of the time to tell people about yourself, to send them to a website, to pitch them on like a mailing list opt-in or something like that. And that should be related, because if you've carried the interest of someone throughout your broadcast or what have you, then you should be able to like smoothly say, and here is, if you're interested in more information, bam, I have something for you. If you talk about something completely random, whoever you carry through that conversation is not going to be interested in what you pitch. So you're going to want to make sure that you actually have a streamlined understanding of what you're going to actually talk about for your brand. Now, keep in mind, if you have multiple brands, you might have multiple things that you might talk about as a guest expert. That's fine. But you want to be strategic. You don't want to give somebody who you're pitching a laundry list of things that you could talk about, because, one, not only is it the likely that they're going to choose something that does not have anything to do with your funnel, but 2, it kind of makes it look like you don't know what you're actually talking about or what you're about. And 3, it puts the effort of work on the other person, because especially if they're doing like some sort of open pitch, most likely you don't know them. They don't know you. They don't know what your guest expertise is. They can look at your website and decide, but most of the time they're going to look over your unfinished or vague pitch, and they're going to move on to the person who has their stuff together, who maybe has like a speaker sheet, who has like a clearly defined expertise, who was able to take their area of expertise and tie it to the audience of the person that they're pitching. Because that's the secret. You want to make sure what you're talking about is of interest, and you want to make it seem like you actually kind of know what the podcast is about. Because once you say, and do you think this would have value for your audience, it's kind of like saying, oh, I didn't actually listen to an episode or watch an episode or, check out your website or look at your stuff. So you tell me if this works. And then, no, that doesn't work. That is never a good sign. I know a lot of people who ask me, why am I not getting selected for podcasts? What's the deal here? Why am I not able to get visible? And it's because you are sending out a very scattered realm of expertise, or you're sending out lazy pitches, or you don't have enough of a understanding of what you offer that it makes it difficult for you to tailor that unique value to different audiences. So when you are, let's say you want to be on a podcast that is targeted towards coaches, and you are somebody who maybe you do wellness, what you would do is just tailor your topic. So if you talk about wellness, adrenal fatigue, and mindful weight loss, then what you would do is take those topics and think, okay, if those are the 3 things that I talk about, and this person's podcast is targeted towards coaches and the coach's life, then my topic should be about how the stress of being a entrepreneur coach can lead to adrenal fatigue, and how you can use, wellness and mindful weight loss to combat that. Like, there you go. Now you have a very quick and simple pitch that ties to that audience and also connects to whatever's in your funnel. You want to make sure that you're able to do that. Because if you can tailor your pitches to other audiences when you're podcasting, you can think on your feet and do that when you're actually in a sales call. So make sure that when you are talking about being the guest expert, just to summarize this whole video, one, you're going to want to make sure that you're thinking about how you can really add value to that group, to that episode, to that person, to their audience. Think about the value that you're going to add. The next thing is to make sure that you are actually like being intentional in who you choose to work with. So think about making a list of the top people in your industry and the folks that are maybe closer to your league. So who has a podcast, who has a show, who's somebody that you can pitch yourself to. Make a good list of people who are in your industry, who are moving, shaking, having shows. They might not be the big dogs, but if there's somebody who's active and consistent, then they're probably somebody on the make. And if you can get into their show now, better for you than maybe later on. Think about all those people who maybe rejected John Lee Dumas, and now people pay to get on EOF. Think about that. After you make that list of the people that you want to pitch yourself to, make a strong pitch. Make sure that you have like a file that has a short bio, your name, your website, at least 3 topics that you can speak confidently on. Make sure that it's like not a whole list, maybe 3 to 5 at most. Make sure that you have something that's concise. That's going to be the sort of stuff that you would put on a one sheet, a speaker sheet. After you've determined your 3 to 5 things that you're an expert on, make sure that when you go through your list of people that you can pitch to be a guest expert, that you're able to make some sort of like tie-in between their audience and your topic. So, example, when I pitched myself to Hannah Dixon to do a guest spot in the Nomad VA, I clearly said, I'm going to talk about how a VA can redo their LinkedIn profile so they can, one, look very legitimate as a virtual assistant, find new clients, and be able to do some local marketing and stuff like that, and find local people to target on LinkedIn for their services. So I made a very clear and defined pitch that was totally all about that audience, very useful to them. You're going to want to be able to do that too. You're going to want to make that argument before you even send off your pitches, because if you're trying to get on, let's say, the Smart Passive Income podcast, you're not going to be like, hey, Pat Flynn, tell me what you think would be cool, because Pat Flynn don't have time for that. Most podcasters do not have time. That's why a lot of people get ignored, because they don't do a concrete pitch. They ask a stranger to evaluate them. And most of the time, the person who's evaluating these podcast pitches are going to be the VAs. It's going to be somebody else. And they're probably going to look at that, and they probably already have a rubric where unfinished pitches are just discarded. So you want to make sure that you're really showing a unique value proposition for that person to be their guest expert. Once you've done that, you're ready to pitch yourself. And if you're thinking, oh man, that's a lot. If you're cold pitching somebody, yeah, you got to figure that out. Like, you don't need to make it an overly formal process, especially if you already are maybe pitching people who are in your circle. However, if you have an understanding of how you're going to tie your expertise to that person's audience, that's what you need to do, even if you're pitching your best friend. Make sure that you are able to do that on the fly, because if you can't do that on the fly for a pitch, it's going to be hard to do that in a sales call. It's going to be hard to do that when you're at a networking event. It's going to be hard to do that, when, maybe you are, just meeting people and collaborating in like a summit or something like that. You want to make sure that you know exactly what you can bring as a guest expert to a variety of different audiences. Now, I meant for this live stream to be shorter, but like most of my live streams, it got a little long. I will close this out, but let me know what your questions are about being a guest expert, how you can start pitching and promoting yourself and making more visibility. Let me know if you have any questions, okay? Anyway, happy Sunday. As always, I'm Sami, your career and your LinkedIn and your funnel specialist. Bye, guys.